I had just decided in Austin that I did not want to work with people whose values were so obviously compromised and who did not seem to understand the kinds of violence they were doing in their communities and their environments. And when I say that, I'm saying it of the best people I knew. I could not continue to be a part of those environments and not make a significant distinction. And Planet Waves is not perfect. Eric's work is really, really good. Eric is not perfect. But I had made this decision at that time in Austin, Texas, that if I was going to put a lot of energy and love and strength into building a platform with others, if I was going to be in any kind of collaborative relationship with other people and collaborative platforms or other people's platforms, I had been doing so much to support other people's platforms and taking ownership of my place in their ecologies, not realizing until later how much violence was just accepted as an everyday sort of thing. And when I began to really deeply absorb the offerings from Planet Waves, I knew that I wanted to make different decisions in terms of how I was going to make a living, how I was going to draw income, how I was going to interact socially with others on the basis of my profession. And I had so many possible options for what could my profession be? How will people perceive me? What do I call myself? What is my, like, not just an internet platform, but what is my platform as a person in the world? How am I seen and experienced? And what was really lovely about Planet Waves was that it encompassed so many of the necessary intersections. And there was this point in Austin where I had made the decision to withdraw my energy and resourcing from the business people and groups and community projects that I had been investing so extensively in. And I wanted to put that into a relationship with Planet Waves and helping to expand, helping to nourish, helping to strengthen, helping to more greatly interconnect a platform that was already providing so many benefits in its community spaces. And it's so interesting that it was just about that same time that my body was failing me, and I didn't know why. And there were some specifics about how my body was being affected by environmental poisons that I did not know yet, but I did know some things. And so I was already training myself toward how do I do my very best work at these intersections? And who do I want to collaborate with that I really respect myself for collaborating with? Who do I want to collaborate with that I feel is doing a lot of good in the world? And Planet Waves was it. I really appreciated so much about Eric's work. I thought, all right, well, let's find people who are demonstrating their values in a more honorable way. And that's where I gravitated to. And since then, my ways of thinking about all of this have really changed. But what struck me this morning in a beam of light is that I had basically deep in myself made the decision to move towards whatever happened with Planet Waves, expressions and publishing and public media broadcasting, and research and community resources and recovery. So it was this intersectional decision point in Texas where I knew I was going for those intersections with my creative public presence. That's what I knew that I was doing. And it was almost like the moment I knew that I was doing that, a whole lot of particular elements and influences seemed to converge to test my resolve and my core access to honesty about my real experience. Whoa. And then this is a great memory exercise. Thank you to Achim for helping us with memory things. Achim Lemke, I will put a link to our chat, and we've got more we can post. I hope to do so. Memory things are really happening. So those faces I made just now are because of the elements and influences that basically converged to kill my body if I told the truth about what was happening. And that's just that's a very vivid neurological repair that just occurred. I don't know that I have ever thought about it in that frame before. And this one is full of light. Let's just take it one more step. These elements and influences that seemed immediately to converge to kill me if I determined to continue on my path. It's very funny to say that way. And it's funnier even to recognize it as so accurate. I know that there are many people that will see this and recognize that feeling. Yeah, well, anyway. So admitting that truth to one another has been a big part of restoring functional, sustaining network communications. We've been coming to terms. And it's not as much of a shock now as it was before. We don't want to cling to the shockiness of it because it's hard on our bodies. Reflecting about it brings us very powerful benefits. Powers, functions, privileges. Okay, so we've established that much. Let's part 3. as I experienced this, it became more and more clear to me that telling the truth was very important at these intersections, in these circumstances. So I went through a lot telling the truth anyway, even though it seemed to be giving other people a whole lot of reasons to participate in something or other trying to kill me. And through such severe and ongoing neurological injury, losing the functions of being able to determine whether a person is safe to interact with, but not only that, finding out at a fundamental level that many people whose hearts are there for caring for others have been unknowingly influenced to behave or speak in ways that would make a severely disabled sex trafficking survivor, for instance, immediately unsafe with that person in that environment, even if in every other way the person would be safe. And that it is the patterns that people run because they don't know those patterns hurt anyone that result in conflicts that feed trafficking systems, where if we have better ways of communicating with one another and learning one another's languages and one's languages of respect for one another, traffickers cannot take people out from under our noses and cannot make people sick in ways that seem to force them into a particular kind of decision point that they can't think broadly enough about in order to really be informed about what their decisions mean. There's an informed consent conversation. In Austin, when I started exploring the Planet Waves platform, I was making a very grounded, conscientious decision to move towards problem solving that I found to be most powerful for building and restoring the community structures that I wanted to have for my healthy relationships and healthy growing family. And so many people right now are being forced into decision point intersections where their health is under major threat and they don't know exactly where that threat is coming from, but there are some strong voices and strong marketing approaches that are geared towards saying, well, this is clearly what is going on. This is the only thing that's going on. If you think it's something else, you are incorrect. You should listen to the experts doing the science. We should probably also use the word propagandize. In any case, the more neurological injuries you sustain, the more you have to make some blunt, uncomfortable, sometimes terrible decisions about whether or not to listen to the propagandizing. And if you have lost too much neurological function by the time the onslaughts you, you may not even understand having a choice at that time. You may simply do what you are being programmed to do, especially if you have been kept in the midst of extreme continuing violence that no one talks about around you. We talk about the normalization of violence. And that's going on everywhere right now, where we require the ability to make distinctions about, is this decision point mine, or is it being pressed on me by someone's else? Is it being imprinted intentionally so that I will run those patterns regardless of my own well-being and the well-being of the members of my family and communities? We have to really notice what is our real selves. Dig into Catherine Austin Fitts interviews, solaryreport.com. Do not miss this. It's very important. She is describing human trafficking intersections in great detail with amazing accuracy and consistency, considering what she has been put through. We must know ourselves. In Austin, I knew it was very important for me to know myself if I was going to be a strong enough being to move through what was clearly what I was moving through, what was clearly in front of me, what was being introduced from many different trajectories, members of my community having situations, people I really cared about. How do we build our lives together? How do we all recognize and honor and support one another? Lots of really good things were happening in my communities, but the co-optation influences were very murky. And any of us who brought up co-optation influences were targeted with aggressiveness and retaliatory stuff pretty quickly. I didn't understand a lot of that at first, and then it had to become more and more apparent as it became more and more life-threatening. The most important thing that I want to say about this and about Planet Waves is that what was happening on the Planet Waves platform, what Eric was producing in his readings for membership, different levels of participation, generally involving whether or not one has money, but not closed to that, which was another reason that interacting with them was really important with me. They recognized different values, different currencies, different ways of supporting one another, regardless of the presence or absence of dollars, money. What Eric and his team had been building at Planet Waves for a long time before I ever discovered them was an integrated content stream inclusive of current events, an understanding of one's environment, honoring one's community, honoring one's family, honoring one's right work, with astrology, which had been run out of so many professional environments for reasons that can be discussed at different time, with spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence. What do you dwell on? How do you do your self-work if you want to know yourself? That is a major set of subjects in Planet Waves materials, and it was conspicuously missing in a lot of other places. There were other places talking about that, but not combining it with astrological expertise, not combining it with current events and real everyday community circumstances. And that combination, some similar combination, was often what I was gravitating toward in so many ways. But I had been finding organizations that sort of played at self-knowledge without seeming to really have self-knowledge, and the violence occurring tended to have a lot to do with that. And so as I searched for organizations that had a better understanding of that kind of self-knowledge, where we do that work together, that's part of the work not only of individuals but of families and of communities. And when we do that, these co-optational trafficking structures can't come in and mess with us if we do that. And that was one reason that when I stopped being able to determine, when I and others in our groups stopped being able to determine whether it was safe to reach out to Eric, part of it was knowing how this stuff influences people without them having any idea. So we could really care about a circumstance or about a person and see those trafficker influences encroaching on their spaces. And if we have no way to say what our experiences are, if we have no way to be in communication, we have to stay away. And that's very hard and very horrible. And so this, realizing like how huge that was before we lost the neurological function to allow us to determine what could be safe in that communication situation. Before that, we were recognizing all of these elements that were crucially necessary to deprogramming an environment affected by trafficking organization influences. We were already looking at that. And then brain function, apocalypse. And coming back to it now is largely due to the efforts of intuitive groups and one-on-one conversations, where we have been working through the very physical, very real neurological repair needed to more fully absorb Planet Waves broadcasts, Planet Waves publishing, all of the different multimedia content that they share. And we have only been able to do that because we managed to establish just enough communications and just enough consistency of neurological function to be able to continue that, so that I could be speaking about this here, so that I can establish a linear set of neurological pathways that allow me to move through the conversation that needs to happen when it is so complicated, when it is so complex, when it involves a lot of details that people are not familiar with. It can involve very hardcore, scary, gruesome details that can be difficult to know when it is the right time to say them or not. And so for these reasons and many other reasons, so many people don't have these conversations at all. But what that means, if you're not familiar with these conversations, it means there are survivors in your environments that you will not recognize. And that's going on everywhere. So it's been so important for us to move through this process in a way that others can witness it, so that you recognize what is happening and you start to have a means of learning how to recognize people in and around your environments who are being affected by it. It happens in many different ways. There are lots of different layers and permutations, but we can recognize them. And we do that by spending time in enjoyable, life-honoring, nourishment-oriented activities in community settings where we're always practicing recognizing and including people who are the most severely affected by invisible violence happening in and around human trafficking networks. So that's great. And it's great to be connecting more of these memory spaces that we've been rehabilitating. And it's great to say what Planet Waves has meant to me in a way that I have not been able to at all this whole time. So I have tremendous upsurge of detail. And it involves ensuring that my container is strong and resilient, and that I'm breathing and feeling the things that my body has for feeling, because shutting them down shuts off all the functions of the body, and then I can't even process that material. But I'm processing all of these different kinds of violence at the same time as I'm getting better at listening in a relaxed, contented way to Planet Waves programming that I missed. But not only missed, I mean, like, had to treat like an enemy just to be sensible, just to be smart about the intersections that we have been aware of that other people have not been aware of. And so having to provide for our own physical safety in those ways, having to be the guardians that remember this particular set of information, because if no one remembers it, then we all just get trafficked. And more people get trafficked if we don't remember this stuff. So that's what we've done. And now we are, because of the responses we have received and the way that Eric and others at Planet Waves have been patient with our very chaotic process of trying to come back into contact. The environments that we were in while listening to Planet Waves, those environments were violent. Being able to determine how to build trust after recognizing the kinds of violence that are going on in some of those spaces. I don't know. A lot of people think that's impossible, but clearly we're doing it. That's a good feeling to feel. Thank you to Eric and Planet Waves for sharing their materials with us in the ways that they have been, and giving us their support in us modifying files so that we can actually help them reach people who cannot reach them otherwise, the disability aid infrastructure that we use for public media and private media. I don't even know how we managed to make that communications connection, but we did, because we got a really clear response from them a couple of years ago, that yes, we could do that. And some people had been treating us really terribly just even for asking. It was a pretty horrible set of experiences. So once we realized that we had at least that much communications clarity, we've been having these conversations so much more robustly. They've been really improving a lot of ways of navigating. It's really like if you pick up a kid's math workbook and do some math problems, it's just like, brain exercises. We can use some brain exercises. And this is a kind of brain exercise in trauma recovery that is not supported or facilitated pretty much anywhere else. We haven't been able to find it. If you are too severely disabled, nobody wants to try to help you get better except us. So if you know people who are responding to that and they are not being witnessed, we would like to witness them, because we have been doing this. I'm really grateful to all of the different people and groups that have responded with kindness and courage to us. Of course, we want and require a swifter, greater response, but wow, we get to honor each individual that is able to respond this way. And they have been so rare. And they do deserve to be honored for the distinctions that they make in their behavior, that, as far as we can tell, are not generally made by most others. We can celebrate that together.